Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días, aquí tienen el horario para hoy, viernes el 21 de febrero. Your learning target for today, wrapping up our unit, lesson 2, describing your ideal city and community and utilizing past participles as adjectives to do that. We've talked about adjective clauses this chapter, adjective clauses used to describe an antecedent in your main clause. We've talked about using the subjunctive with conjunctions, which actually is the same as the adjective clause. And then lastly, looking at past participles and how they can function as adjectives, all centered around your target of describing your ideal city, community, and even people, as you've done when you guys were talking about your ideal boyfriend or girlfriend last week. Our warm-up for today is Activity 2. I don't believe we got to finish Activity 2 last class. We'll wrap that up at number 6 through 10 on page 71. Due today is your song lyric activity, Vivir mi vida, by Mark Anthony. We will review the notes on Nosotros commands that are on page 70, review the homework, the song lyric activity, new notes on past participles as adjectives, a little bit of guided practice, one pair practice activity, and then a worksheet. Past participles as adjectives worksheet, which also includes a little bit of practice on Nosotros commands. That is our agenda for today. Let's go ahead and get started. Your warm-up on page 71. Activity 2, the last 5 questions. All of these pertain to the Nosotros command form. Talked about how to formulate the Nosotros command form. Generally speaking, uses the first person plural, the Nosotros form, the present subjunctive. As you can see for these examples, that is for both the affirmative and the negative form for most verbs, generally speaking. However, the verb ir, the only exception to that rule, ir uses the affirmative, not the subjunctive, of the present indicative. Affirmative present indicative for affirmative commands. However, for negative commands, you would use the present subjunctive of ir in a negative command, just as you would for negative commands for all other verbs. It's only the affirmative command that's a bit different, where you're using the present indicative of ir. Vamos. What we're going to do now for Activity 2, your warm-up, is focus on this concept that you can use the ir a infinitive construction to express the same idea, let's do this or that. The only difference, though, is that, or the only issue with that, rather, is that it kind of creates a little bit of ambiguity in that ir a infinitive is also used for the simple future, right, to indicate what you are going to do. So what we're going to do for Activity 2 is, instead of using the ir a infinitive construction, you're going to replace the examples of ir a infinitive with the first person plural, in the present subjunctive, which is the Nosotros command form. This is exactly what you guys did for your song lyrics as well. We'll get to that here in just a moment when we wrap up the warm-up. So, Activity 2, join me if you would please, page 72. And again, we're just going to do 6 through 10 as I believe. You can watch the video from last class. I'm pretty sure we got to the first 5. All right, so you can see in the example, ir a infinitive, the verb ir conjugated in the Nosotros form, obviously, because these are Nosotros commands. But we're going to change them out of the ir a infinitive form, take the main verb, and conjugate it in the present subjunctive Nosotros form. Present subjunctive Nosotros form. You can go to page 14 just to run back how you would go about formulating verbs in the subjunctive, steps to take to do that. 14 is always a great place to go if you're a little stuck with especially some of these irregularities and our irregular verbs here. 14 is your go-to. All right, back to page 70. I guess that's 71, my bad. All right, so you can see the example, vender would change to vendamos, and we're adding the accent mark because as the notes indicate on page 70, when we add an object pronoun, whether that's a direct object or indirect object pronoun, we have to add a written accent mark to maintain the original stress. That's why you see an accent mark added in these examples, because we're attaching object pronouns to the very end of the commands. So vender in the nosotros command form would be vendamos. Buscar in the nosotros command form would be busquemos. 6 through 10, limpiar would be limpiemos. And if we want to replace la habitación with a direct object pronoun, it would be la. Number 6, limpiémosla. Limpiémosla. Number 7, miremos. Miremosla. Let's watch it. Bailemos. Bailemos. Number 9, pintemos. Pintemosla. And finally, number 10, compremos. Compremosla. All right, that's our warm-up for today. Taking a look, as we had said at the agenda, at what is due for today. We already kind of looked at the notes already. So the song lyric activity, you have instructions there, but since we're already here, you're highlighting the examples of ir a infinitive, highlight, underline, circle, what have you, and then change them into the nosotros command form, just like we did here. The only difference between the song lyrics is that it's not vamos a, but voy a. But just like how we did for activity 2, you're doing the same for the song lyrics. So voy a reír would change to reamos. Reamos. Voy a bailar would change to, just like how it was in number 8, right? Bailemos. Reamos once again, and then gozar, be careful, is a cargar czar verb in that the Z changes to a C when we conjugate it. Again, 14 is a great place to constantly refer. So gozar would be gocemos. G-O-C-E-M-O-S. So going through all the examples of ir a infinitive, not just an infinitive all by itself, but ir a infinitive. And actually, if we really want to geek out on this, you could have, para que means why cry, why suffer. We can make a negative command out of these. And then some of these, para entender, we could say let's understand, let's find. There are actually a few more that are not just in the ir a infinitive, that we could really, come up with some more examples. Maybe we'll geek out on that together and create some more content. But that's essentially what you needed to do. Ir a infinitive, change it into the nosotros command form. All right, now we're going to get into our new notes today, which are past participles as adjectives on page 73. Whoops. A ver, página 73. Past participles are verbs in their past form, a base verb articulated or expressed in its past form. In English, we can use past participles as adjectives, and past participles in English usually end with the letters ed. As you can see, the examples here, past, the test is past, The game is played. Oh my gosh. The dog is walked. Ed, right? Just add the ed suffix to the base form of the verb and you get your past participle. Yeah? It's not always the case in English, though. We have a lot of irregular past participles. Buy and bought, drive and driven, teach and taught, say and said, go and went. And in Spanish, we have some irregular past participles as well. But the fundamental or the regular way that we formulate past participles in Spanish is removing the AR and adding the ADO. ADO is the ADO is the AR verb equivalent of the ED ending. Yeah? So, for example, bailar, take off the AR in bailar, add ado and bailado, danced, right? That would be the past participle, bailado, of the verb bailar. ER and IR verbs share the same past participle ending. Remove the ER and IR in the infinitive, and then add IDO, IDO being the ER, IR equivalent of the English ED. So comer becomes comido in the past participle, eaten, yeah, in English. Vivir becomes vivido, lived in English. Past participles where the stem, everything that's left over when you remove the AR, ER, IR, these past participles whose stems have an A, E, or O right before the ending carry a written accent mark. Caído, creído, leído, oído. And again, this is for pronunciation purposes, similar to how we saw with Nosotros command forms. There's a pattern. We can geek out on this together, but commands, the third to last syllable always is stressed in the command form. So that's why we have to add the accent mark. Otherwise, we would mispronounce the word given the addition of a syllable. And in terms of past participles, as is most words in Spanish, it's the second to last syllable that's stressed. So if you're adding another syllable by adding the ending, we're adding the accent mark to maintain that same syllable stress. There's a pattern that exists in Italian, in Spanish. I would imagine it exists in Portuguese, perhaps in French and Romanian as well. Romance languages, I'd be curious to know as to why they use the term romance, where that term comes from. But I think a lot of people associate those languages as being very melodic, poetic, if you will. And I think a lot of that is attributable to the pronunciation flow that exists. And so these written accent marks serve as to maintain that flow, that pattern, that even to the untrained ear is very predictable. Anyway, not a big deal if you forget that. And here you have your irregular past participles, like in English, right? In English, there are many past participles that do not end in ed, such as these examples here. Eat and eaten is another example here. Regular in Spanish, but irregular in English. And here you have about a dozen irregular verbs that have, or verbs that have irregular past participles. Abierto, coming from the verb to open. Dicho, coming from the verb to say. Descrito, coming from the verb describe. Descubierto, coming from the verb discover, to write, to do, to die, to put, to resolve, to break, to see, and to return. In Spanish, as in English, past part, and just to finish off there, these do not have some of them have a similar ending, that TO ending, or RTO ending for some. But there's no pattern there. They're irregular. They do not add an ado or ido. Last note before we do our inténtalo. In Spanish, as in English, past participles can be used as adjectives. Talked about that at the very top. Yeah? Just like in English, past participles can be used as adjectives in Spanish, often used with the verb estar, which in English would be the verb to be, to describe a condition or state that results from an action. Like other Spanish adjectives, they must agree in gender and number. Like all adjectives, as you learned in Spanish 1, adjectives agree with the noun that they modify in both gender, whether the noun is masculine or feminine, and in number, whether the noun is singular or plural. So these past participles can change their ending, right? Ending in O, ending in A, ending in OS or AS, again, depending upon the gender and the number of the noun they modify. For example, en la entrada hay algunos letreros escritos en español. In the entrance, there are some signs written in Spanish. Written is a past participle. It's an irregular past participle. But you can see the ending of the past participle agrees with the noun that it modifies. Masculine plural noun, masculine plural adjective. Tenemos la mesa puesta. We have the table made or set. Mesa, feminine singular. Puesta, feminine singular. Y la cena hecha, and the dinner made. Hecha, coming from the verb hacer, which is to do or to make. And then cena is feminine singular, and so too would be hecha. So all you're doing for the inténtalo is indicating the indicating the past participle that would correspond to the infinitive, just as you can see here in these examples. Some of them are irregular, like romper, like escribir, like hacer. So just keep that in mind. You may want to refer to that chart. I'll give you a moment. Number 1, hablado. Number 2, bebido. Number 3, decidido. Number 4, roto, or irregular. Roto, to say broken. Number 5, escrito, as we saw in the examples here, written. Number 6, cantado. Number 7, oído, adding the accent on the I. Number 8, traído, adding the accent on the I. Number 9, corrido. Number 10, leído, adding the accent on the I. Number 11 is visto, and number 12 is hecho. Those are the past participles of these verbs in the infinitive. We'll do one pair practice, and then we'll get to your homework, the worksheet. A ver, where are you? Ahí está. Thank you for waiting patiently. Those of you watching this video, we'll go through the homework right after we do the pair practice. Looking at activity 1 here on page 74, completa las oraciones con la forma adecuada del participio pasado del verbo que está entre paréntesis. Easy peasy. Take the verb that's provided, complete the sentence using the appropriate form, and again, the past participle, which typically ends in ADO or IDO, if used as an adjective, which is the whole point of this grammar, demonstrating how past participles can be used as adjectives, just remember that because it's serving as an adjective, that it changes in agreement with the noun it modifies, agreeing in both gender and number. I'll do 1, 2, 3, pause, and then you do 4 through 7. Hoy mi peluquería favorita está cerrada. My favorite salon or barbershop is closed. Está cerrada, because we're talking about peluquería favorita. Por eso, therefore, voy a otro salón de belleza. I'm going to another beauty parlor. Que está abierto. Abierto todos los días. Abierto and not abierta. This is an adjective. Our noun here is salón, which is masculine singular. Anything that comes after de doesn't serve as your noun. It serves as an adjective, right? Describing what kind of salon this is. Beauty salon. So, que está abierto todos los días. Queda en la Plaza Bolívar. It's located in Bolívar Plaza. Una plaza muy conocida. Una plaza muy conocida. Todos los productos y servicios de esta tienda están descritos. Ending in os because our subject is masculine plural. Número 5. El nombre del salón está escrito. El nombre del salón está escrito en el letrero y en la acera. Cuando esta diligencia esté, notice the subjunctive use here, with a conjunction, with an expression of emotion. Cuando esta diligencia esté hecha, necesito pasar por el banco. Espero que mi dinero ya esté depositado. Depositado. Because you're talking about mi dinero. All right, let's take a look at the homework now. Homework is past participles as adjectives worksheet. Don't forget to turn in your Vivir Mi Vida revised song lyrics as we talked about earlier today. All right, let's go ahead and go to the handout. We're going to start on, let's start with where we left off here, past participles used as adjectives. That's what we just talked about. Pretty straightforward. Complete the sentences with the correct past participle forms of these verbs. And again, serving as an adjective, it's going to agree with the noun that it modifies. And that noun is typically going to come right before the blank. Right before the blank, right before the blank, right before the blank, right before the blank. And if you have a de, and then another word serves as a descriptive adjective. So don't pay attention to the gender and number of that word that comes after de. Pay attention to the number that comes before the de. That word is your noun that's being described. All right, number 1. Me voy de paseo junto al río en una bicicleta prestada. Julián y yo tenemos las maletas abiertas por toda la sala. Tu sobrino te regaló un barco hecho de papel. I'll pause so you can do the rest. Number 4, a la abuela de Gabriela le gusta recibir cartas escritas. And again, all of the endings agree with the noun that they modify right before. Número 5, Rosa tiene un sombrero puesto, dinero ahorrado, abrigos guardados, varias ciudades perdidas, amigos preferidos, tobillo torcido. Tobillo torcido. Rafael resolvió, got to read the instructions. Complete the sentence with the verb estar and the correct past participle. So estar, as you remember from Spanish 1, has 5 conjugations in the present indicative. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. So that would be step 1. Step 1, conjugate estar according to your subject. Regular present indicative, Spanish 1. And then your your past participle would still agree in accordance with the noun that you're modifying. La señora Gómez cerró la farmacia. La farmacia está cerrada. Rafael resolvió los problemas. Los problemas están resueltos. So you also need to utilize the verb here. This is tricky. Identify the verb that's used in the first sentence, and that's going to serve as the verb from which you're going to create your past participle. So if you're not sure what these verbs are, as a best practice, go to Spanish Dictionary. And then, for example, that first one, where'd you go? There you are. Resolvió. Maybe you're like, oh, what verb is that? Just put resolvió in Spanish Dictionary, and it'll tell you what that verb is in the infinitive. Take literally 5 seconds, as I just did, so you can know for sure. I mean, you probably recognize this verb as preparar. You probably recognize this verb as vender and prohibir, confirmar, aburrir. But if you're not quite sure, look it up. All right. So continuing, Julia se preparó para el examen. Julia está preparada. Le vendimos esa aspiradora a un cliente. Esa aspiradora está vendida. Se prohíbe nadar en ese río. Nadar en ese río está prohibido. When we use a verb as a noun, grammatically speaking, that's masculine singular. That's how we got prohibido. When a verb is a noun, we use the masculine singular form of any adjective used to describe it. La agente de viajes confirmó la reservación. La reservación está confirmada. Carlos y Luis se aburrieron durante la película. Carlos y Luis están aburridos. You guys recognize that adjective? All right, pretty easy and straightforward this last activity. Label each drawing with a complete sentence using the noun provided, such as pavo and dormitorio. Conjugate the verb estar according to that noun, just as you did in these activities, these sentences for activity 2. And then create a past participle with the infinitive provided and conjugate or express it rather in accordance with the noun that it modifies. El pavo está servido. El dormitorio está desordenado. All right, last part of this worksheet goes back to where we were first looking, the nosotros commands in the present subjunctive. These two activities pertain to that. Everybody likes Lina and wants to be just like her. We're going to use nosotros commands to collectively convince ourselves of things that we should do to follow her lead. For example, Lina compra zapatos italianos en el centro comercial. Lina, and then compra is going to change to the nosotros command form. And we're going to take out Lina because we're not talking about her anymore. We're talking about us. So number 1 would be compremos zapatos italianos en el centro comercial. Conozcamos, C-O-N-O-Z-C-A-M-O-S. Remember, if you're not quite sure how to conjugate verbs in the subjunctive, go to page 14. Remember how to start verbs. Start off your conjugations with the present tense yo indicative. And if you're not quite sure how to conjugate the present tense, throw the verb such as conocer in Spanish Dictionary. Go to, not dictionary, but conjugation. And then you can see there a Z is added. We're going to remove the O and then add to that stem, C-O-N-O-Z-C-O. You're going to add your ER verb endings to get that answer for conozcamos. Again, all in the nosotros form for commands. Vayamos, nos vayamos. Vámonos. Number 3, vámonos. Just as we have heard it in our culture, right? We've heard vámonos. Vámonos for number 3. Number 4, relájenos. Reflexive. Relájenos. That's why we're adding the nos at the very end. Number 5, relajémonos. Forgive me. Number 4. Relajémonos. Number 5, hagamos. No salgamos. Corramos. No gastemos. Those will be the commands for those. Sorry about 3 and 4. The reflexive pronoun threw me off. All right, and activity 4 to finish off here. Thank you so much for your patience. If you find the video helpful, please like and subscribe. Leave some comments. I wonder how many of you actually watch these. Claudia is thinking of everything that she and her fiance Ramon should do to buy an apartment, right? Which she will tell Ramon using Nosotros commands. You're going to pull from the very beginning of these sentences, and they're using verbs like poder, can, deber, must, tener, have to, maybe a querer, want to. So you're going to take out those verbs of need or desire out. You're going to focus on the infinitive that comes directly after, and it's that infinitive that you're going to express in the Nosotros command form. For example, instead of podemos pedir, take out the verb poder, make pedir, and in the Nosotros command form, and you get pidamos. Pidamos, llenemos, ahorremos. Ooh, I like how they have a hasta que. Check out that subjunctive there. Any others, just out of curiosity? Ooh, yeah. Cuando solicitemos. Maybe for extra credit, if you're watching this, highlight the conjunctions, circle the use of the subjunctive. If you want to secretly earn yourself some extra credit, if you're willing to catch those Easter eggs, go above and beyond what the instructions are asking you to do, highlight the conjunction, such as those provided, 66, yeah? No, a little bit before that. You don't want me to deviate, I guess, do you? But just so we're on the same page, literally, was that not? Dang it. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? The conjunctions that are used in the subjunctive when the subject is unknown or uncertain. Okay, back. Sorry about that. Okay, ahorremos, cobremos, or no cobremos, I guess, negative command. We have a lot of examples of the subjunctive in here. Depositémoslos, depositémoslos, depositémoslo, if you want to replace el dinero with a direct object pronoun. Depositemos. You can actually do that with a lot of these, include a direct object pronoun to replace the direct object, like pidamoslo. I wish they would have asked you to do that in these instructions. Pidamos, pidamosle. Busquemos, busquemoslo. And no vayamos. Vamos.